Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Saturday morning. My name is Steven, and I am the host, as always. And joining me is my good friend Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How are you doing today?
Doing well. Saw Wicked last night. Never would have guessed I would have liked Wicked over Gladiator 2, but here I am. Thoroughly enjoyed it. A tad long, but otherwise fantastic. I didn't know Ariana Grande had that in her. She was awesome. Good movie.
Yeah, I'm normally not a musical fan, and Brooke has seen the musical, I think 5 times. So when all of that was coming out, like she was super excited about it. She loves Ariana Grande and everything like that. This is saying Chargers Ravens preview on.
I can edit that. Okay, we're doing it again, folks.
That's weird. Strange.
Here we go. Okay, now we're at Falcons. The thumbnail
Okay.
says Falcons.
Okay, thumbnails Falcons on StreamYard. It says.
Okay, we're good.
Okay,
we should be good.
Sounds good. Anyways, Brooke has been dying waiting to see this movie, and she was on an avid senior trip when it came out, and so we had to wait for her to get back, and so we went and saw it on Monday, and none of her friends or family wanted to go with her, so I went with her, and I was like whatever, it'll be fine. It was great. I loved it. The visuals were outstanding. If you're not a musical fan, I think it can play either way for you. So good movie. Gladiator 2 was fine. The action scenes were awesome, but it did feel just kind of like a copy paste plot line from the first one.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to do all the member berries again. Wicked is literally like about the Wizard of Oz, and there's some not retreading, but a lot of things that are very similar. And that was less of a retread and Easter egg and whatever than Gladiator 2. Wasn't great.
Fitness said that his wife didn't tell him it was a musical until they got to the movies. That's on you if you didn't even know that Wicked was a musical.
Oh man. I don't know how you don't know that that's a musical, but hey, yeah, I don't know how you don't know Wicked's a musical. I've never seen the musical or the play, and I knew it was a musical.
Yeah, but good movie. I saw that this thing from AMC theaters, they're expecting that this is the biggest Thanksgiving weekend since the pandemic, which obviously makes sense because they have Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana 2. And as somebody who loves going to the movie theater, I think that's fantastic. I think more people should go to the movie theaters more often because I don't want that industry to go away. So love to see it. I love going to the movies. We went and saw both of those movies this week. Not super into Moana, but that's okay. So we'll, we had some good time. So hopefully everybody had a good Thanksgiving. It was a great holiday. I love Thanksgiving, as I said on the show. I made the mac and cheese. It went fantastic. Everybody loved it. So it was great. Did you make anything this year, or
like me specifically?
Yeah.
So the only thing I got to be in charge of was mashed potatoes, which is about as brainless as it gets. But smoked paprika, thyme, rosemary, and all that good stuff in there. It was a war crime against your GI tract, but it was delicious.
Hey man, peeling those potatoes can get tiring for sure.
I know. I manage though.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So we are here obviously to preview the Chargers and Falcons game. Apologies for the incorrect title on YouTube, but we are here for the Falcons game. So we'll do a quicker version of our preview show than we usually do because we do want to get to some questions at the end. So we already have one super chat in from Athir, and we appreciate Athir for jumping here and always. So if you guys have questions, feel free and send them in at the end of the show. But let's dive right into the preview here, as we do every single week, looking at some coaching storylines. So for you, Tyler, when it comes to this coaching matchup, where does your attention first go?
Yeah, so I think the Chargers have had the right idea, especially maybe the last couple of weeks and the defenses they faced, going after the one-on-ones that they see on the boundary. And generally, they've been able to create those one-on-ones for whatever reason. But they've been able to get those one-on-one matchups. And so they've been throwing the ball down the field. But given their lack of success, does Roman continue to roll the dice there, or do they pull back? So Herbert has had the most deep passing attempts over the last 2 weeks. He's had 14 attempts, and they've only completed 5 of them, which is like bottom third of the number of the quarterbacks who have attempted 5 or more deep passes over the last couple of weeks. Not great. I'm pretty sure either 4 or all of those have been to McConkey. And otherwise, if they're going to, as we just saw against the Ravens, if they're going to Palmer, if they're going to Johnston, it generally has not worked at all. And for that reason, we're seeing this lack of success, especially in the second half with their offense. We talked a lot about this on our Panic or Patience video, but they're not quite seeing the same success. And they're definitely not seeing the success in terms of rate, completion percentage, whatever you look at. And this week in particular, I'm not overly scared of the Falcons defense. They're like 21st, 23rd. They're not a great defense by any means. They have some players. What they do have is 2 safeties that we should probably be more or less, afraid of, if you will, that might keep us up at night in Bates and in Simmons. So given the lack of success they've had, and I don't know if DJ Chark is going to do anything this week, but it seems like no. So if DJ Chark's not involved and they have the same personnel they did the last couple of weeks, given the 2 safeties and their lack of success, is Greg Roman going to keep pushing that this week, or is he going to dial it back a bit? Because you also could look at the defensive line in the Falcons and go, yeah, we're going to have a lot of time to throw this thing down the field. So they could also just do that. So I'm curious what the give and take is this week, given their identity and Herbert's arm, and they've been getting the one-on-ones. That's all good, but then the success has not been there. So do you keep leaning into that, or do you pull back a little bit heading into the postseason? That's early, I know, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it's the right place to start, and I think my coaching storyline, it's in the title on StreamYard. It's how do they game plan this offense without JK Dobbins? Do they lean into the passing attack this week, which is a great matchup, but we can dive into some of the more specific numbers here. But they're going to have to run the football at some point, and Greg Roman hinted at a bigger workload this week for Kimani and Vidal. Obviously, Gus Edwards is somebody that he has vocally expressed a lot of trust in publicly previous weeks. Over the last 4 weeks, the Chargers quietly have improved their rushing success rate by a good amount. If you look at the first 8 weeks, they ranked 29th. They ranked 29th in rushing success rate. Over the last 4 weeks, however, it is 15th, and a lot of that is part into JK Dobbins. But I think the run blocking has started to come together at a much higher rate. And part of that is, just the chemistry between Zion and Bradley Bozeman and Trey Pipkins has started to improve. Part of it, I think, also is a big credit to Scott Matlock and Tucker Fisk and the physicality that they're bringing to the table. We talked last year all about the awful blocking from the tight ends that led to the super inefficient run game last year. This year, the Chargers have 2 really good blocking tight ends with Will Dissly and Tucker Fisk. And then Scott Matlock is really coming into his zone as a fullback, which I still can't believe that's a thing. We're 13 weeks into the season, and I still can't wrap my head around sometimes Scott Matlock being a good fullback. So anyways, the run blocking is really starting to come together. But then again, part of that is JK Dobbins, hitting lanes that he shouldn't. Part of that is JK Dobbins, making the right reads. Part of that is his vision, his burst. He's having a very, very good season for a reason. Gus Edwards doesn't have the same kind of explosiveness. He doesn't have the same kind of vision, but he can get the plays that are blocked properly. And then Vidal is kind of a mystery bag. So what does the run game look like? What do the answers look like? I think is a huge part this week, because I think the Chargers will be able to get out to an early lead. And they've done that over the past few games. It's been a big reason for their success, obviously. They're going to have to run the football. They can go into Atlanta and pass 50 times if they want. I don't think that's how they want to live. And I think they've really got to start establishing, a further identity in the run game. And I think that starts this week against the Falcons defense. That's kind of like in the 20s in run defense. They're not awful, but they're not very good either. So how do the Chargers find answers without J.K. Dobbins on the ground, I think is, for me, the biggest storyline this week.
Yeah, I feel like the easiest solution is who Edwards is. Like you said, it's kind of at expectation, maybe slightly under expectation, but better the last couple of weeks. So you get your chunk, 40, 50 yards, 10 carries, maybe through there. I don't know if they're going to give him 18, 20 carries. It's possible. By the way, for those who forgot, Gus Edwards is on a 2-year deal. So they do have to figure it out with Gus Edwards. Now they could cut him, but in theory, they want him around next year as well. So they got to figure it out with him. And then do they generate explosives elsewhere? Like Darius Davis was your X factor last week. Maybe less so on offense, but in the return game, he's just been lights out the last 4 or 5 weeks or so. He's had 2, carries or attempts or targets or receptions or whatever the last 3 weeks in a row. Does that ramp up? Do you use Gus Edwards for like your generic 4 yards a carry, 14, 15 touches, and then Davis is your explosive guy, or Rager's your explosive guy, or hey, you said it perfectly, I think either after the game or during our preview or our Panic or Patience video, Quentin Johnston, his confidence. Could you give him a handoff here, which they've done before, a jet sweep, something, anything? So I'm curious if they just do the generic Gus Edwards and then explosives built around him elsewhere, because that's just not Edwards, and that's fine. I never expected Edwards to hit the 80-yard touchdown or make 14 people miss and do this and that. We kind of knew who he was, so can they kind of generate the explosives around him?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the plan I want to see is how do the other guys get involved? Because I think when JK and Gus are at their best, like that's where the running game is going to be the focus, is those 2 players. You don't have JK Dobbins now. So does that mean, Quentin gets 2 carries, Davis gets 2 carries, Vidal gets 7 or 8, and then Gus gets 14, 15. We'll see how that kind of goes, going forward. There is a chance that JK is able to play next week, but based off of how Jim Harbaugh was talking about it, it sounds like this is 2 weeks at minimum. Which is really unfortunate because, not having JK against the Chiefs, who got away with another completely BS win yesterday against the Raiders.
My poor father.
Yeah, your poor dad. Just super frustrating to this is a very beatable Chiefs team. And so not being at full strength, specifically on offense, again, like they weren't in week 4, is pretty frustrating. So we'll see what happens there. But this is a big Gus Edwards moment, right? Because you mentioned he is still under contract next year. JK's had obviously a huge breakout season. I don't think the Chargers will want to bring back both of them next year, just from a financial standpoint. That doesn't really make sense for them to put a ton of money into the running back room. So it feels like they're going to have to pick one or the other. And right now, JK is obviously, well ahead in that race. In terms of what we're excited for, you hinted at it. I think from an offensive line, defensive line perspective, this is probably the biggest advantage that the Chargers will have the entire year. The Atlanta Falcons as a team have 10 total sacks. I'm going to repeat that because it's kind of crazy that in week 13, the Atlanta Falcons have 10 total sacks. They're averaging fewer than 1 sack per game in the NFL, which is insane. They have good players, right? Like Grady Jarrett's a good player, or has been a good player at least. Matthew Judon has been a good player. David Onyemata has been a good player. We liked Arnold Ebiketie a decent amount. But their leading pressure getter is off-the-ball linebacker Caden Ellis, who has 80 pass rush snaps on the season because he's just a blitzer. And he has 22 pressures, so he's really good in that role. But that's a big problem when your leading pressure getter is an off-ball linebacker blitzer. Like, imagine if Deion Henley were the Chargers' leading pressure getter. So the Atlanta Falcons are 32nd in pressure rate. They have 10 total sacks on the season. It's a mess. The Chargers should have, like, if they allow more than 25% pressure rate this week, it's a massive failure in my opinion. They've been kind of hovering around 30%. So, they should have a super successful week this week from, an offensive line perspective. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt last week were outstanding. There were several reps where Kyle Van Noy just like flat out gave up. He's like, I can't do this. So those 2 tackles are great. Zion quietly has allowed 3 pressures in the last 4 games. Trey has been kind of a liability, but Bradley Bozeman also very quietly has allowed 3 pressures in the last 4 games. So this group is starting to come together along the interior. You still have some issues every now and then, but we know what the tackles are capable of. And so this to me has all the makings for a big Justin Herbert day, because I just don't really see him getting pressured all that much. And I think this offensive line is going to have a very good day from a pass protection standpoint.
It's a Chargers podcast when everyone in the chat is going, well, we said that about the other teams and then they got destroyed in those particular respects. I get it. Against the Cardinals, I could not, gun to my head, name 3 players on that defensive line that were healthy that game. and they throttled the Chargers. Now, I will say the offensive line has been playing way better the last few weeks. So I don't like that Chargers offensive line a few weeks ago was really struggling, and they ran into a Cardinals front that just played well that day. The Chargers are playing well on offense right now, or excuse me, on the offensive line right now, outside of Trey. But I mean, they dealt with the Ravens last week, and before that week, they had 3 players with over 30 pressures on the defensive line, and the fourth guy who didn't have 30 was Travis Jones, who's a terror in the run game and is great in his own respects. This week, as you mentioned, you're the Deion Henley of your team to be your leading pressure guy is not great, and Ebiketie being the next best guy at just 20 pressures is not great. I mean, it's not even like the 10 sacks, like you said. Maybe they're just really good at getting pressure and terrible at getting sacks. No, they can't even pressure the quarterback either. So it's rough going for the Falcons, which should be good news for the Chargers.
Yeah, and the scheme is very different. Like the Cardinals do a lot of complex things. The Ravens do a lot of complex things. From what I can gather, the Falcons blitz Ellis quite a bit, but he does also line up on the edge, like as a stand-up edge rusher quite a bit too. So, there's not a ton of complexity there. This is a Vic Fangio type of scheme. They want to play 2 high safeties. They want to protect, the shell of the defense. So I think the Falcons are like 20th in blitz rate. So they're not at the bottom. They're not Gus Bradley, but they're not, at the very top end either. So again, this should be a matchup that the Chargers offensive line should be able to take advantage of quite a bit. All right, Tyler, what are you most excited to watch this week?
I'm probably going to get killed for this as the idiot who decided to come up with a chant for this guy or try to think of a chant for this guy. I'm excited to see how Quentin Johnston responds. We preached patience tentatively on our Panic or Patience show. We understand that there have been issues. There were issues last year, and there's definitely issues against the Ravens. I'm excited to see how he responds because I think Jim Harbaugh at the very beginning of the year, before the season even started, was going to bat for Quentin Johnston. And it had just instilled this confidence in him, whether it's just one-on-one with him or obviously in front of the media, saying he got a bad deal last year. We know what he is. We know what he can do for our team. And I think that really helped Quentin Johnston. So he rebounded from a bad first year and was doing better this year. He even had that awful touchdown drop in training camp. And I posted the video and everyone's like, oh, he sucks, whatever. And then he had a pretty good training camp the rest of the way. Like it wasn't perfect, but he rebounded. So he rebounded in training camp, rebounded this season. I think Jim Harbaugh and the philosophy and all that he is about getting that confidence back in these players and never wavering. And Herbert says, look, I'm going back to him. Now, again, as we mentioned in the Panic or Patience show, they don't have a choice. So they are going to have to go back to Quentin Johnston. So I'm excited to see if he can respond again to having a bad day. And unfortunately, coming off the worst game of his career. But I'm excited to see how he responds.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Falcons use Adric Terrell this week. He does shadow a decent amount. And so is that Joshua Palmer? Is that Quentin Johnston? Does he not shadow? Does he just stay on his one side? He's the one corner that you're obviously, primarily concerned about from the Falcons perspective. But yeah, I think Chargers fans should be rooting for a Quentin Johnston bounce back because it's better for the team when Quentin is playing well. We've seen that, be the case in several other games. It's been a rough last 6 quarters, if you will, for Quentin. Yeah, and I'm excited to see how he bounces back. All right, opposite side of the coin here. I think there's a few areas where we could go to. We haven't highlighted yet a ton of the Falcons offense. So I'm curious if that's where you go here. But Tyler, what is keeping you up at night about the Falcons team? You're on mute, Tyler.
What's keeping me up at night is my ability to hit the mute unmute button. Apologies. A couple errors for me today on the technical side. It's Bijan Robinson. So, okay, Derrick Henry, that was a lot of fun. Who's next? Oh, it's Bijan Robinson. Great. That sounds really fun. 7th and forced missed tackles with 38, over 3 yards after contact per attempt, which isn't like super high, but still 3 yards after contact, which is pretty good. And then almost 10 yards after the catch per reception. So if you're a team that has struggled against really good running backs and tackling them, congratulations. You don't have Denzel Perryman or Cam Hart or Alohi Gilman. Go tackle Bijan Robinson. Sounds fun. That's keeping me up at night because we're worried about it against the Ravens, and that's Derrick Henry, so that's a whole different thing. But we saw it against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Didn't work against Connor. Now you have Bijan Robinson coming up next. And if it was really rough going to the Ravens game and being there and just watching Derrick Henry get 4 to 5 yards every play, no matter what. There were guys on him. There were guys in position to make plays, and it didn't matter. He had 101 yards after contact, just rushing in that game. So here's Bijan Robinson next, unfortunately.
Yeah, obviously the loyal listeners here will remember how we all felt about Bijan Robinson as a draft prospect, and he's lived up to the hype. I know that there were some people who were disappointed in like his rookie season, but he had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. So it's been obviously a good thing to see for him so far this season. I will say from a style standpoint, Bijan Robinson has 130 carries on zone schemes and only 35 from gap schemes. I think the times that the Chargers have really struggled, it's been when the opposing offenses can kind of control the middle part of the Chargers defense, cloud the rushing lanes for the Chargers linebackers, and be able to just get downhill. The Falcons don't really do that. Again, this is a Rams style offense. Their offensive coordinator, I'm totally blanking on his name right now. The Chargers interviewed him before they hired Kellen Moore.
Zach Robinson, thank you.
Oh,
thank God.
I was going to say Thomas Robinson, but that's not right. Zach Robinson, he was with the Rams for quite some time. Like, this is a Rams offense through and through. They want to live in outside zone. They want to get out on the edges. They want to get Bijan and Tyler Algier in space and let them make plays, challenge the corners, challenge the safeties to do that. Well, the best way to stop outside zone is to have haymakers on the edge. And that is what the Chargers have. And then you couple that with the athleticism of Deion Henley. I am curious if this is a Nick Niemann week or a Troy Dye week. We don't really know. The Chargers said after the game that they wanted Nick Niemann to play more against Derrick Henry because he's a bigger body than Troy Dye. Gun to my head, I wouldn't have guessed that. It kind of looked like the same size to me. But this week is much more about space and chase, athleticism. Can you get to the edge? Can you stop Bijan from getting out in space? I think the Chargers hold up well there. For me, the part about Bijan that I'm more nervous about is his ability as a pass catcher, because he can do all of the route tree. They get him out in choice routes, 4 or 5 times a game. And if he makes somebody miss, then he's gone for 20 yards. So from a run defense standpoint, I expect the Chargers to bounce back. I think against a zone heavy team, they'll be okay. And I think we've seen them, do very well against this scheme in previous games. But for me, Bijan as a pass catcher just kind of, it's a tough moment. We saw them struggle against Alvin Kamara. We saw them struggle against some of these other pass catching running backs. So Bijan and the pass catcher for me was going to be my choice if he wasn't yours.
Yeah. I mean, Bijan in general for me, but yeah, as a pass catcher, I think he's at 350 receiving yards through the year so far. Could get to 400 just in this game. Connor, as tough as he was as a runner, was just as fine as a pass catcher in that game against the Chargers. So yeah, they have a lot on their plates this week.
Okay, so Fitness says Nick Niemann is 12 pounds heavier.
I was just trying to look that up. So Nick Niemann, 234 on the RAS at least. Troy Dye. Ooh, I can't spell today or do anything useful. 231 on his RAS. So based on RAS, it's 3 pounds. They're not wrong that Nick Niemann's a heavier guy.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I kind of just assumed like Troy Dye, I think, is taller, has longer arms. So I would have just guessed that Troy Dye was heavier. I don't know. I wouldn't have thought that mattered all that much, but the Chargers thought Nick Niemann would be a better fit, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, Troy Dye is taller by 1/4 of an inch.
All right. So we'll see how it goes. This could be another game where the Chargers kind of get back to their roots a bit and do the 6-man box thing as well. Play a lot of safeties, and we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons. That's what's keeping me up about this Falcons defense.
Yeah.
They don't have a ton, but their secondary is quietly very good, in base formation. So when they have the traditional 2 outside corners, 2 safeties, like, they're a good defense. They're one of the best defenses in the league out of base packages because of the ability that the 2 safeties have. Both of them are very, very smart. Both of them are very, very rangy. Both of them have great ball skills. So this is a game where, like, if you if your receivers make a mistake on the boundary, like I could very easily see one of these safeties being in the position to pick it off. This is, potential like forced fumble game. The Chargers have been great about the turnover battle for the bulk of the season, but these two safeties can just flip a game at any moment because they have the range, the IQ, everything to just make up so much ground in a hurry. And we are all very aware of what Justin Simmons can do because he's played on the Broncos for such a long time. So is this a game where, Justin Herbert has only thrown the one interception? If this becomes a game where he throws one pick, somebody else fumbles, etc., Chargers are losing the turnover battle, we haven't really seen them be in that kind of game script just quite yet this season because they've been so good at protecting the football. But these safeties can change that in a hurry. And so the turnover battle potential here for the Chargers to be losing that, I think is a bit more prominent this week because of the two safety play.
So, of course, because Justin Herbert, thankfully, a very, very low turnover-worthy play rate on deep passes. Or I guess it doesn't have to be a deep pass, but in general, only 4%, which is tied with Joe Burrow and just behind Josh Allen. Wow, I didn't realize Josh Allen was doing that this year. Good for him. So yeah, that could definitely be dangerous. He's been very, very, very good about protecting the football. But I don't know. I mean, the DBs have really gotten their hands on the football the last couple of weeks, but I can't think of like an interception close kind of game. But he's, unfortunately, given the rate that Herbert has, he's due for an interception at some point. Like, it's going to happen at some point. Yeah. So could be this game. We'll see. I just don't. I don't know what the pass rush we talked about. I don't see Herbert just like
right
and bad throw, but who knows?
Yeah, obviously, the pressure plays a large factor there, but these two safeties are they're so good, right? And they're probably the two best safeties in the NFC, if I had to just guess off the top of my head. So we'll see what happens there. Okay. Next here, let's get to our prize picks selections of the week. Again, this is Saturday. We always do this on the Saturday show. So prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. Best and easiest way to get into the daily fantasy sports world. They always have specials. They have college football covered, NFL, NBA, all that good stuff. Highly, highly encourage you guys to check it out. prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. All right, Tyler, for your prize picks lineup of the week, who are your Chargers picks?
Just looking at the Chargers, I have to try with the optimism this week and say Gus Edwards more on the 45.5 rushing yards, only because if he doesn't get that, we're totally SOL on the entire season in terms of rushing. Now, if that becomes as Alex is pointing out in the chat, the Kimani Vidal legacy game, and maybe he's the guy who gets 250 yards. So, I think you're still like I'm short a little bit there, Alex. But I think just in terms of volume, there's no competition. Well, there seems to be no competition for Edwards. Although I saw Haskins take several goal line carries against the Ravens, so maybe they feel good about him. I think Edwards should get 15 touches, and if he can't get 45 out of that, you can kiss him goodbye next season probably, because the Chargers' offensive line. There's, like you mentioned, the line, the tight ends blocking, the way the Matlock's developed, the scheme, whatever, they've been so much better than the last time than when Edwards was the bell cow guy for them, getting 18 carries a game. So I think the more there is good. I can't say that Quentin Johnston, I'm excited to see him, and then I can't take the over. So I will take the more here on Quentin Johnston at 37.5 receiving yards. At least that's what I had on him this morning. And, let's go Josh Palmer, more than 39.5 receiving yards there. They've clearly, I just feel like there's some sort of mild turning point here with how often Herbert's been targeting Palmer. And generally speaking, I think he's been reliable, not necessarily down the field, but there are so many the throw that he made from the left hash all the way to the right sideline, off his back foot, open body, incredible. I think there's a little bit of Palmer on the way for this game. I think 39.5 is a little low.
Yeah, I think that those are all good selections. We are obviously expecting a big week from the offense. Justin Herbert's passing number is 248.5. So I think we could pretty easily see that happening. Kevin is taking specifically the rushing yards for Justin Herbert, which is 21.5.
Yeah,
I think that's also a good selection, right? Because we've seen him scrambling more often. I think we probably see, a couple design rushes for him. So Kevin pointing out a pretty good selection there. I'm taking more on the passing yards. Like I mentioned, I just think he's going to have all day to throw in this one, and I think that's going to result in a big Justin Herbert game. No JK Dobbins probably means more overall throws. And then you're taking the other two receivers. I'm also taking Ladd McConkey. D. Alford, who is the Falcons slot corner, is allowing the third most receiving yards among starting slot corners in the league. In the fourth highest passer rating when targeted. I mentioned the base specifically because when they play base, they're very good. When they play in their nickel, not so good. And a large part of that is because of D. Alford, who is unfortunately kind of on the wrong side of 30 for the Atlanta Falcons. So Ladd McConkey's number is pretty high, but rightfully so. He's at 68.5. That's probably a little high for my taste, but I do think that this, again, has the potential to be a huge Ladd McConkey game because of the matchup, because of the lack of potential running game, etc. And then the last one I wanted to bring up was Will Dissly targets is at 5.5. His receiving number is very high. It's at 41.5. But targets 5.5, I think is pretty easy to hit the more on because it's been above 5 for the last month and a half. So I do think that this is a really easy one. He's kind of their screen guy also. Yeah. So I think that's easy. As Brendan pointing out that Ladd will be back in Georgia. Lots of guys from Georgia on the Chargers, obviously. And that includes Kimani Vidal as well, for what it's worth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you want to take a safer bet, Dissly and McConkey are probably your best bets. Now, their numbers have obviously increased over the course of several weeks. Like McConkey, Dissly, what was their week one number combined? 25 receiving yards, 30 receiving yards. Now it's like, 130 receiving yards for them. Yeah, McConkey's a really good bet. Really, any way you go. If it's targets, you're probably great there. If it's receiving yards, you're probably pretty good there. Receptions, you're probably pretty good there. He's just Mr. Consistent, and I hope he has another big game. I just want him to get that much closer to that 1,000 receiving yards. If he has another 80 to 100 this game, awesome. And I wonder with Dissly in particular, Dobbins has kind of been the other check down, safety outlet guy. With Dobbins out, and we'll see what the rest of the running backs do. It's kind of by default Dissly at this point, unless they change it up with McConkey. So I like that for targets.
Yeah. Do want to point this out. If you filter on PFF to just the AFC wide receivers who are like starting caliber receivers, Ladd McConkey is 7th in total receiving yards, 7th in yards per reception, 7th in receiving grade, 8th in yards after catch per reception, 8th in yards per route run, 7th in missed tackles forced, and 6th in first downs created. So that guy's pretty good. And I would encourage everybody to go vote for him for the Pro Bowl because I think he has a legitimate case. Numbers all indicative of a top 10 AFC wide receiver. So there you go.
Love it.
Okay, Tyler, who is your X factor of the week? Again, that last segment, prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. But X factor of the week for you, Tyler, who is it?
Yeah, it's a little boring because we already talked about him, but it was Kimani Vidal because this team has no receiving option currently at running back unless it goes through him, I think. They have zero explosive play potential in their running back room unless it's him. I really think this guy's got to show up and show anything because they need 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks of any kind of explosive play out of their running back room. And I think he's the only one who's going to give it to them over the next couple of weeks. So sorry, Alex, not 278 yards and 2 touchdowns, but 50, 40, 30 yards, something. Yeah. A key couple of third down catches. Anything like that would be awesome.
Yeah, if he can give them 50, 60 yards from scrimmage, that's a huge win. Obviously, we've seen what he can do in the pass catching role. The last game before Gus came back, they used him on a couple like Texas routes, and he didn't get the ball thrown his way, but they looked really good. And I was like, okay, like this guy can contribute as a pass catcher, and he was kind of taking more third down reps than JK was at that time. So very curious to see what his role is overall. My X factor of the week, we don't know for sure if he's going to be active, but Alohi Gilman is out with an injury. The Chargers lost AJ Finley to waivers to the Seattle Seahawks. They did claim Marcus May, but this is Marcus May's first game. So I kind of expect not AJ Finley, excuse me. I expect Tony Jefferson to be active from the practice squad this week. And I expect him to play a good amount. You know, the Chargers have shown a very good ability to onboard these players and have them play, but it kind of takes a few weeks usually, specifically on defense. So Marcus May might play, you know, a very key role down the stretch. And that is very, you know, possible. Lohi Gilman kind of putting on Instagram a little cryptic thing about injuries I didn't love to see.
Oh, great.
So we'll we'll have to wait and see what his injury is like, but he's dealt with injuries in the past. This is obviously not a player who's been 100% healthy all the time. So Tony Jefferson might be a really key player for them. Marcus May, same kind of thing. This team loves to play with 3 safeties, 4 safeties sometimes on the field at various times. Specifically this week, we've seen them use Derwin James in terms of the big nickel package, in terms of matching up with tight ends. Well, the Falcons have Kyle Pitts, so I would expect a lot of Derwin James on Kyle Pitts, and whoever is the third safety is going to be in a key role. And to me, that's Tony Jefferson this week. So we haven't seen him play a ton on defense. He's been active a few times. They've signed him to the roster, cut him. It's been a lot of back and forth, but he hasn't played a ton. I think he logs his most snaps of the season tomorrow, and I think he plays a significant role in potentially limiting this explosive Falcons offense. So give me Tony Jefferson as an X factor. Maybe he forces a fumble, maybe he gets a sack, maybe he gets a tackle for loss that just kind of sparks this group. He's kind of like the the grandpa of the unit, and I think we see him show up big tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a really good call. It's probably the best X factor call of any Chargers player this week, because it could be a range of outcomes. You could see a very strong positive impact, no impact, negative impact, lots of plays, 5 plays. I don't know. But I hope he has a really good game. The Chargers will need it. Gilman, I looked through the post. Was it a story or was it a post or for Alohi?
It was
the art of the unknown.
Yeah.
Birth of wisdom, beginning of faith and fear, source of the power.
I don't know. It just struck me as a little weird to post that like right after he's listed as out with an injury.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
We'll see. I knew Zont. Who was it? Was it Zont?
And like his second picture is like him being looked at by the trainers.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just was a little too cryptic for my tastes. We'll see. It might mean nothing. He might just be out this week, but
yeah. I'll say he's gonna be fine. He'll be back before the end of the season. We knew Asante was out. Or was it Brendan Wright? No. Someone posted something. We just like, yeah, that sounds like a guy who's about to go to
Asante.
IR. Yeah. This one doesn't seem like that, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Game picks. I'll start us off here. I know the vibes within the fan base are not great. A lot of people are not expecting the Chargers to show up. It's a 10 a.m. game. We've said this a few times. The floor of this Chargers team is that they are going to roll in and beat a team that they should beat. And I believe that this Falcons team is a team that this Chargers team should beat. The Chargers are favored by 1.5 points on the road. And so that's indicative of a team that I think is better than the team that they are coming to play. The 10 a.m. kick previously was something that the Chargers have always struggled with. They have looked better at moments, obviously against the Panthers and the Steelers. 10 a.m. kicks was kind of a mixed bag, but they did steamroll the Panthers, and obviously they were supposed to do that. And the Steelers game was like I said, a mixed bag. So I'm a little concerned about that. A little concerned about the Falcons coming off of a bye week, having the rest, Chargers on a short week. But again, the Chargers are going to be prepared for this game. I think the defense, specifically like with Khalil Mack and what he's said publicly, they're going to be extremely motivated to get back in the win column. And I think this is a defense that's going to come in ready to rock against the Falcons offense and prove that last week is more of an aberration than who they are as a unit. So I expect the Chargers to win this game. I think they win by more than a field goal, but less than a touchdown. So I'm thinking kind of like, 24 to 20 type game, or like 27 to 23 type situation. But I do think that the Chargers should be able to win. I think the defense gets back on track. I think the offense has a good week, even without JK. And so I just think that this is a team that wants to prove that last week was not who they are as a team, and they'll get back in the win column tomorrow.
Yeah, the hesitation is no Cam Hart, which they've survived that, but it helps tremendously. No Denzel Perryman versus Bijan Robinson. That helps tremendously. I think this will be not like the Titans game, but like the Chargers are the better team, and they've generally handled the inferior teams pretty well. So I don't think it'll be that big of a gap. But I will say like Chargers win. I'll say 27-20 in this one.
Okay, so we're kind of in the same range, but I do think the Falcons
comfortable enough win, I think. But Falcons are dangerous.
Yeah, the Falcons are dangerous. Asking about specifically how the Broncos beat this team. They heated up Kirk Cousins like crazy. I want to say the pressure rate that the Broncos got against Kirk Cousins was like 55%. So they blitzed him like crazy. That's just kind of not who the Chargers are. And I think Algier missed that game, if I'm not mistaken. So that also played a factor. So the Falcons are a good team. I just think the Chargers are a better team.
Dang, 38-6.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We're 41 minutes into this thing. So we'll take questions for about 20 minutes. We do have a few super chats that we'll get to. Feel free and jump in with any of your guys' questions. And then we'll head out for the rest of the day. It sounds like Michigan and Ohio State's a fun game right now. So if you're into that game, hopefully it's a good one for you.
Oh, great. I just don't want to hear it from Arjun again. What is it? It's a score. What's the score? Oh, it's 10-10.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Colston Loveland mock draft selection to the Chargers is like 80% of mock drafts that I see. So
yeah,
he didn't play. He's not playing today, which is unfortunate, but yeah.
As long as he makes it to 32.
There you go. All right. Athir with the first couple here. His first one, he says, Herbie needs to cook early. Roman, please. The Chargers' first half offense has been significantly better than the second half offense. That's no secret at this point in time. So I think the Chargers will be able to start faster than people are thinking.
Yeah, I bet you there's the opening drive touchdown. I bet you they get 10 points in their first two drives. Yeah. Couldn't tell you what happens after that.
Wouldn't shock me. The next one, he says, I have a question. Everyone talking about Flowers versus QJ this week, which is unfortunate. He says that the Chargers' mistake they made was not selecting Dalton Kincaid, and that he should have been the selection over a wide receiver.
Unfortunately, the Chargers could have gone many directions. I think in the lead up to the mock draft, we did like the dueling mocks or whatever. I think I took like Brian Branch and you took Jordan, or Gavino took Jordan Addison.
Mm-hmm.
Someone took, basically we didn't take Quentin. So there are definitely several different directions they could have gone. Kincaid would have probably been really, really fun.
Yeah.
You would have seen a completely different reaction from Steven, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, we were definitely trying to justify the selection after it happened. If you have been listening to the podcast, you know that none of us really loved Quentin, the prospect, and a lot of his issues have maintained throughout his career, and we wish him nothing but a successful career from here on out. But at that time, it kind of felt like they were leaning towards tight end. A lot of the late information that I was hearing was that it was like their main debate was Kincaid versus Michael Mayer. And, the Chargers needed a tight end. They ended up not taking a single tight end, which is unfortunate. But yeah, the one route that we kind of thought about for them that I'm glad that they didn't go through is taking one of the pass rushers.
Yeah.
Because you look at Miles Murphy, Nolan Smith, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, those guys, BJ Ojolari was in that class. Keon White has been really good, but that's been not a great pass rusher class outside of Thule, who was their second round selection, and he's been awesome. But
yeah,
I am glad that at least Quentin has been a reliable player so far this year, and those pass rushers are not that.
Yeah, no, it's been a kind of brutal setup. I mean, I think Lucas Van Ness went like 12th or whatever that class.
Yep.
If you want to go further, like Tyree Wilson obviously was a top selection in that class. Will Anderson is good, so Will
Anderson is very good.
But for the most part, yeah, it's been a bit of a rough group. Thule, hey, thanks to Lesko. Good job.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, the 2023 class is panning out pretty nicely, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Next one here from Dark Samus. He says the Bolts need a Quentin Nelson caliber right guard in the draft. A lot of teams need a Quentin Nelson caliber right guard. But, specifically in terms of where you want to allocate the resources, is the offensive line for you kind of a draft thing or a free agency thing?
Ooh. That question is so much easier to answer once you kind of know more about both, and in particular the draft. I think given we're going to assume they make the playoffs, draft like, let's say 25 to 28 or something. I don't know. Both get your starter and forget about it, and then go find your backup interior guy in the draft, like they probably should have done the last 3 years. But I mean, the Corey Linsley like Hymus thing could have maybe worked, but
yeah. But Hymus, they started out as a guard. Like he was never really thought of as a center until it didn't work at guard. So, and again, them choosing
now it's Sam Mustipher.
Now it's Sam Mustipher, which is great. I think offensive line for me is definitely a free agency thing. And I think for the Chargers, it will be, because I know everybody wants them to go after T. Higgins, and I get it. But if you are Jim Harbaugh and you're looking at this interior offensive line group and you're trying to upgrade where you want to go, like it has to be free agency. So there's two big names, like big names in terms of interior offensive linemen. It's Trey Smith at right guard, and then Ryan Kelly would be the center. So either of those two players I think would be significant upgrades. I am curious what this front office actually thinks of Bradley Bozeman like beyond this season, because he's a captain. The teammates love him. He's always the offensive lineman who gets to spike the football. I know that's like a really like probably small thing for some people, but it's not. This team loves Bradley Bozeman for who he is as a person, who he is as a leader, and he is starting to play at a higher level. So is this a regime that looks at Bradley Bozeman and says, hey, like we can win with this player at center. Let's upgrade the guard situation and let's go get Trey Smith or go get Will Fries if he hits free agency, and then let's draft a center of the future. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities for this team.
I at least think Bozeman's making that conversation have to happen now. And maybe they were already having that conversation. I'm sure that was something they'd considered as soon as they signed him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's started to stabilize the middle there, and Zion is playing better. And if Zion is in your future too, if both are playing well towards the end of the season, you probably want to keep them together too. So I could see it. He's not a Will Clapp backup, so I don't think they would be able to bring him back on any kind of backup deal. But yeah, I could see them giving him another deal. I so far, based on the way it's trending, would be okay with that.
Yeah. As long as they can upgrade the right guard position, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
If the solution is like, let's just run it back, I don't think that's a solution, right? And I think that's just kind of asking to not improve. And I can't see this team doing that. The other aspect of this is Thomas Martinez points out, I have not started my draft prep yet, to be completely clear with you. Yeah. But whoever you talk to or listen to, whether that's Thomas or Alex Katzen or Dane Brugler or whoever, this offensive line class is not great. The tackles are not very good. The interior offensive linemen are not. It's not a super deep class. Dane Brugler was on the Athletic Football Show this week and said that Amarius Mims, who was, I think, my 6th offensive tackle in last year's class, he would be like a no-brainer top 5 pick in this class, because there's just nobody. So some of the top tackles who people were excited about are kind of more like guard converts, kind of like not playing super well. So this is not a good year to need an offensive lineman, unfortunately, for the Chargers. So if they want to go on an upgrade, it's got to happen in free agency.
If you're a team looking towards more than just 1 year, and the Chargers are that team, the Joe Alt pick continues to pay off, because one, he's pretty good. And two, so they knew the second round, third round wasn't going to be great. I mean, the Chiefs have tried with Kingsley Suamataia, and his numbers are terrible. That hasn't worked. Then now you
put Joe Tooney at left tackle.
I saw that. Yeah, they will do anything but put And I was, wasn't a huge fan of Kingsley. You didn't watch him. You probably would have been on him. You wouldn't have liked him anyway because of some particular BYU reason. But yeah, I bet you this receiver class is pretty good. Yeah. I bet you we're going to find 30 million receivers we like, and maybe 1 or 2 tackles that we like, apparently. So again, the Joe Alt selection continues to pay off more than just at the selection who they could have taken. The whole future is good too.
Yeah, offensively, it sounds like this is a great running back class and a great tight end class.
Perfect.
And then just volume of receivers, there's going to be some gems in there.
Yeah.
Because it's just an insane college position every single year, but not a good offensive line group, not a good quarterback group. And, for the Chargers, I think that does line up, and, maybe they can draft a running back. I don't know, tight end. I would definitely prefer a tight end over a running back, but we'll get there. Okay, Aether is back in here again with a bold prediction. He says Chargers up front, 7 sacks, 15 pressures, 3 turnovers, and he thinks the Chargers win 31-14.
I like the sack numbers. 15 pressures. They could do more, maybe. I don't know. I guess it depends on how they want to play it this week, because we just watched Lamar Jackson kind of not have to do anything in an entire game, and then Derrick Henry just took over. Now, as you said, the schemes are different, things are different. Derrick Henry is a whole different beast this year. We'll see how often there is even an opportunity to get a pressure. 3 turnovers. I could see, like, with everyone healthy on the edge rusher room, this being a couple of strip sack sort of game.
Yeah. Kirk Cousins is not the most mobile quarterback in the world.
No.
The Falcons do have a decent offensive line.
Yeah.
Their left tackle, Jake Matthews, is pretty good. Their right tackle situation's a little more iffy, but then, they have some good pieces. Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse has become a nice player for them. Drew Dahlman, I think, he's still injured. Is he playing?
Yeah.
But, they have some good pieces up front. It's a better offensive line than people would think at like first glance. So, we'll see what happens there. But Kirk is obviously not super mobile. He's never been that, and now he's been off the Achilles. So I think the Chargers pass rush will have a good chance to get home, but they got to stop the run early. 3 turnovers. I feel like that's probably less likely than the 6 sacks, but
yeah,
I don't hate 15 pressures. I think that's too few. But we'll see. Next one here from Cozy. This is kind of a Utah question, but he wants to know what drafting Brant Keithy, the tight end, via steal or mistake. Unfortunately for Brant Keithy, his draft stock is probably 0. He's had quite a few injuries. We don't know specifically what it is this year, but he is injured again currently. He's torn his ACL. He didn't play a single game last year because of the ACL injury from 2022. In 2019, he had a shoulder injury. So there's a lot of injury history there, and he's 25. So it's one of those situations where, Brant, he almost came out after the 2021 season, but he decided to return to school because of him and Cam Rising and Dalton Kincaid and everybody. They're kind of doing like a run it back thing. And then he tore his ACL the first game of 2022. And if he had declared for the draft after 2021, I think he would have been drafted pretty early. Now we're talking about 3-4 years later, more injuries. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but a player like that just is probably not going to be a draftable player.
Yeah, the injury history is obviously very unfun. We just kind of saw that with Eric All, who had several season-ending injuries, and then he had tore his ACL this season after a very promising start. So yeah, that just always worries me. If you get to a certain point in some round, maybe fine, take a flyer, but go with less red flags.
Yeah, they definitely need to take a tight end, and I think taking a tight end early is definitely something that you want to do. Quality pass catching tight ends very rarely hit the free agent market. Like if you want to upgrade that position, you're probably talking about like a Mike Gesicki, an Austin Hooper, like guys who we're talking about as like a potential trade target.
Yeah,
but this tight end class sounds like it's really, really good. They have 2 potential first rounders in Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren. They have the Bowling Green guy, Harold Fannin, who sounds like a potential second rounder. There's the Texas tight end today. I forget his name. I want to say it's like Gunnar Helm or something like that. Anyways, watch Alex Katzen's videos. He's talked about this quite a bit. So it's a really good tight end class. We'll see how our feelings stack up about it. But so far, it does sound like this is on par with like the 2023 class, which was outstanding.
Dang. So Telesco won't take one. Not again. I say it every week, but it's so unfair that he took no one in a good class and then just walked right into the guy who's like behind Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in receiving yards this season with fuck all at quarterback. It's unfair. Yeah. I don't know if you want to have this conversation because no one asked about it. I'm surprised it hasn't been brought up yet. Your thoughts, and Thomas Martinez shared the video on Keenan Allen saying he'd return to the Chargers or the Bears, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, so my first thought when I heard that video was I'm playing for the Bears or playing for the Chargers or retiring. Like he doesn't want to do a new team thing again. And it's hard to blame him, right? Because he's at that stage of his career. I love Keenan Allen, and it has been great to see him play better over the last couple of weeks and shine bright on Thanksgiving. I would be a little concerned about the fit. I would, because we know that Keenan plays a lot in the slot. That's what Ladd McConkey does. Like the fit is a little weird to me. And if the price is right, I would be about it. But you would have to kind of change the roles a bit here. So I think it's not as like a no-brainer as people might seem. But emotionally speaking, like, of course I want to see Keenan Allen retire as a Charger, right? Like, we didn't want them to get rid of him. We wanted them to keep him. But emotionally speaking, I'm all aboard it. But then when like you think about it a little bit, you're kind of like, I don't know about the fit with him and Ladd. I think is a little bit. Nicholas says that Keenan Allen doesn't like blocking. I think that is
hard disagree.
Hard disagree. Yeah. He's an outstanding blocker, as we've seen, time and time again. So I think he's a great blocker. I think he would be willing to do the whole like secondary pass catcher thing. But for me, just the fit between him and Ladd would be a little redundant. Yeah.
Yeah. Emotionally, it's a no-brainer. Like, I don't care what he can play safety for all I care. I'd be fine with that. Yeah. Tyree Wilson would definitely disagree with it. That Keenan doesn't like to block. Tyree Wilson went full horizontal, getting knocked out by Keenan Allen at age 32 or 1, whatever he was last year. I mean, they had go watch the Bengals game, I think, from a couple of years ago. He was like a fullback for them on one play on a 4th and 1 goal or like dive or something like that. He's awesome. He can block.
Yeah. Don't mean to seem like we're attacking Nicholas here, obviously, because that is a common sentiment. He's not alone. That a lot of people think Keenan's not a good blocker, but he's very, very good. At the end of the day, he is a 6'3" slot receiver, so he's a big physical body in there, and he can get after it for sure. And I think Quentin and others have talked about watching him as a blocker has kind of inspired them to like be better at that.
Quentin's low-key a good blocker, very involved blocker.
He is. Yeah. The Chargers receivers all block pretty well, I think. There was
Jalen Rigger got lit up a couple of times against the Ravens, but he's also like, that's not really fair, because it was Simi Fehoko at 6'4", 200, whatever he is, and then Jalen Rigger, not the same.
Yeah, there was a play against the Ravens where they had Ladd like on a toss play trying to like seal against what was the linebacker, the big linebacker, Malik Harrison. And it was just like so funny because Malik Harrison looks like he could play like defensive line.
Yeah.
He's so big. So Ladd will block. He does have some size limitations there, but Ladd gets after it. Quentin is low-key a really good blocker, like you mentioned. Palmer loves to block. So, that group has really bought into blocking this year for sure. Yeah, Ellie Bruin points out that Rager did have a good block on one of the Darius Davis returns. When you give him some space, it's a lot better than like asking him to, seal on the backside or something like that.
Yeah, full like horizontal, line up against, I forget who it was. I just felt bad. It was kind of a mismatch. Malik Harrison had a really good day, by the way. I really hate that he had a good day against the Chargers, unfortunately.
Yeah, the Chargers, I kind of figured this would be the case, but I kind of expected him to be more involved on third downs, but whenever he was on the field on third downs, he just blitzed and like it worked for him. But I was was really hoping the Chargers would be able to kind of isolate him and from a coverage standpoint, and unfortunately, that was not the case.
Yeah. Oh well.
Okay, we have one more super chat from Aether. He's been active today. We appreciate that. He wants to know what you're eating for Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs, Tyler.
I don't know what I'm eating tonight, let alone in 8 days. What am I having? I don't know. Oh wait, what am I doing next week? All the holiday things are coming up now. So I basically have like a family thing every single weekend, if not both days of the weekend. I don't know. What should I eat? What should I eat? I will make it and send a picture to you.
Yeah, I don't know what I'll be eating next Sunday, but yeah. We usually do Sunday night dinners at Brooke's parents' house, and they don't like the way that I watch football games. So it's always fun because I'm very active during games. I stand up a lot. I clap, I yell, everything. So my in-laws like to just like chill and be quiet during games, and I don't feel that way.
My dad was sitting there basically silent the entire Chiefs Raiders game because it was kind of a whatever, and the Chiefs were just winning and the Raiders looked awful. And then finally, like maybe there's a chance. My mom finally goes, "All right, John, like come on, like you're always so fired up. You're always like so loud and into it. Like usually, like just come on, get into it." And then finally, my dad was like, "All right, it's that final drive. He's finally getting up and finally fired up." And then for the game to end that way, it was just the worst thing ever. I felt awful. We just all sat there like, oh, what just happened?
Yeah, I could not imagine losing that way off of a snap from a good player. Jackson Powers-Johnson is a good rookie player. Just so classic Chiefs, unfortunately. But I saw a video of like Aiden O'Connell's best friend from high school was like, he made this reel of like, my best friend from high school is going on a legacy drive to beat Mahomes or whatever. And like, the reel starts out with like this really like upbeat music, and it's like all really exciting. And then the snap happens and the music cuts off, and like the color from his face just drains, right? And he's just like hands in his face and like all this stuff. So yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a team lose like that before, which says a lot because we're Chargers fans, right? Like we've seen a lot.
Yeah, we saw the Phillip Rivers. I don't know if you were gone, but when Rivers dropped the kneel down and fumbled
I
it.
remember that one. So that's dropping a kneel down. That's crazy.
And he fumbled a kneel down before a field goal, and that's how the Chargers lost. But the last 2 days, I mean, the Bears and whatever that was, and then the Raiders and whatever that was. That's the nastiest 1-2 way to lose I've seen in a while.
The Bears thing on Thanksgiving, man, that topped any Anthony Lynn bad game.
Oh yeah,
thing that I saw. Like that was one of the worst things I've ever seen. They had 32 seconds left and a timeout, and they did not get off a single play. They got off one play. Crazy.
And it was like a random deep ball shot to the middle of the field. Like everything went wrong. They could have done anything else. They could have taken a sack, and it would have been a better play. I mean, just can't believe it.
They're the people, and obviously Matt Eberflus was fired now, but the people after the game, they were saying like, oh, like, okay, so like that's probably a situation where you have 2 plays called, and you want to save your timeout after the second play. It's like, okay, I can kind of understand that. But once you get down to like 20 seconds on the clock, like you should have taken the timeout, and then 10 seconds and 5 seconds, etc.
Yeah.
It just was awful. I cannot recall a time where a coach had a timeout in that situation and didn't use it. It was just awful. Yeah,
the Chiefs are like the bizarro Chargers of most of my lifetime, where they will pull a win out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember if it was to tie or take a lead, but against the Ravens, an inch of his heel was out of bounds. The block against the Broncos, what just happened against the Raiders. I don't know what it is about that team, but they always have something. It's dark magic, man.
They needed overtime to beat the Panthers, and credit to Bryce Young, man. Like that was probably his best game of his career.
Yeah.
But after the Panthers game, there were all these quotes from the Chiefs locker room that they were so just like fed up of the 1-score games. And then they did that this week. And you can kind of tell like Patrick wasn't excited about it. Like he was not
stunned.
Like he just couldn't believe what was happening. There was also the Falcons game where the Falcons were driving down 3 and they had a chance to win the game. And I want to say it was McDuffie like tackled Kyle Pitts in the end zone and they didn't call a penalty. And like, that's how the game ended. They've had several questionable calls. And so it's kind of crazy, man. I don't know what it is. I was rooting for the Raiders yesterday and people were like, why do you care? Like the Chargers probably can't win the division. Even if the Chargers can't win the division still, I don't want the Chiefs to have home field advantage. Like my overall goal of the playoff as a fan is Chargers win, obviously. Second, the Chiefs don't win. Like that's my priority of rooting interest. And so if the Bills can have home field advantage, I want that to happen because I think the Bills at home is a huge deal for them. I want the Bills to get the 1 seed. And that's why I want any team to beat the Chiefs. And obviously if the Chargers beat the Chiefs, great. Then that fits a lot of agendas.
Yeah, I mean, they get to play the Chargers eventually, and then the Browns. That's tough end of the year. Browns, Texans, at Pittsburgh, at Denver. Yeah. So that's tough. I'm sure they'll win 3 out of 4 in really stupid ways, or 4 out of 5 in some really stupid way. We're going to do it again. Everyone's going to say going into the Chiefs game, like, oh, the Chiefs almost lost to the Panthers and they almost lost to the Raiders. Yeah, just like the Ravens lost to the Browns and the Raiders. And it's just the matchup. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Now Kansas City, it's the same thing. I mean, we'll do the discourse and everyone will do the discourse about the Chiefs again, how they're falling off again. Is this the year again? They're not going to make it. Oh, whatever again. Then they get the home field advantage and they get to the AFC Championship game. Like, it's just the same fucking thing every year, guys.
Yeah, and if they get the 1 seed, like they're making the AFC Championship at minimum.
Yeah, because they'll have to play us. I mean, in Arrowhead.
There's a chance, right? Like, kind of projecting out to future playoff scenarios. So if they're the 1 seed and the Ravens are the 5 seed and Chargers lose to the Steelers, whatever. There's a chance like the Ravens could go into Baltimore and win, but like I wouldn't have faith in the Chargers going into Arrowhead for the divisional winning. I definitely wouldn't have faith in the Steelers going to Arrowhead for the divisional winning. So the expectation for the Chiefs, if they get the 1 seed, I objectively would think is that they make the AFC Championship game. And then, like, I don't know, man. We've seen the Chiefs Bills game at Arrowhead dance several times, and it just unfortunately always goes the Chiefs' way. So whatever it takes to get the Chiefs out of the 1 seed, I think people should be rooting for, especially as Chargers fans. So obviously root for the Chargers to beat the Chiefs, but then outside of that, maybe the Browns will beat them. Maybe the Jameis Winston has some magic in him, and that'll take over.
Yeah, some like positive magic versus like voodoo magic. Be interesting.
Yeah, as Mighty points out, I cannot remember a single team in the NFL in one NFL season have these kind of wins, because it's like every other week it feels like they have like a game where they shouldn't win and they do, and I hate it so much. I'm so sick of it.
Team doesn't go for the jugular. They should have like the Bucks. They should have tried to win that game right then and there, and they didn't.
Yep, that was another one. You've got to be aggressive against the Chiefs. We've seen that time and time again. All right, Tyler, any other final thoughts before we head out?
The vibes around Chargers fandom have been a bit low this week, but I think we are, I think a win this week will happen and we'll feel much better about it heading into a game against the Chiefs, which will be something else.
Yeah, I think people will be back on the bandwagon, so to speak, after tomorrow. I think the Chargers have a good showing tomorrow, and I'm excited to watch it come to fruition. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Appreciate all you guys for jumping in the chat. Appreciate all of the super chats today. As always, make sure to leave us a rating, review, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We do really appreciate it and does help support the show. This has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bolt up.